My show this morning, 6:18 on your tax day edition of the show. I'm not trying to bum you out. It's just that day. Got to get it done. It's all good, though. So
I got mine done in like an hour.
Right. Well, this whole new easier tax filing.
Yeah.
This is one of the issues we're going to talk about this morning, is that Americans are a bit surprised that they're not getting a bigger tax refund. And of course, this is one of the byproducts of tax reform, which was that, well, you're going to pay less in taxes, which means that you pay less in taxes. It also means that you get less back. And there's two things of concern about this. One is that retail sales are very dependent upon tax refunds. And one of the issues with tax refunds is, of course, that people it's interesting. People use tax refunds as a savings account, and this is the most backwards thinking that I can possibly think of out of everything that people do as individuals. Using the IRS as a savings account is not a great idea, because basically you're giving them an interest-free loan for the year, and then they simply give you some of your money back that you gave them, on the 15th. But nonetheless, considering that many Americans don't have any savings, they look forward to this tax refund every year. How many commercials have you seen in just the last couple of days alone for tax day sales, right? Bring your tax refund. You don't have to bring your tax refund check in. Bring your tax return in that shows how much of a refund you're going to get. And, we'll use that for the down payment on a new car. We'll finance, a new refrigerator, whatever it is. Tax day sales are a very, very big part of the retail sales play, right? That happens every month. And of course, we're always looking at retail sales and what's going on. Well, retail sales have been weak the first couple of months of this year. If we take a look at the retail sales structure, what's been going on there, consumers are definitely spending less money now. And that's been showing up in the retail sales numbers. And that's been one of the concerns, economically speaking, about the strength of the economy, which has been watching. Because again, this shouldn't be surprising, because 70% of consumption 70% of GDP is made up of consumption, right? It's what you and I go to the store and buy. So when we go to Amazon and shop, when we go to Best Buy and shop, whatever it is we're shopping for, buy cars, buy houses, that all weighs back into that consumption number, those personal consumption expenditures that make up about 70% of economic growth. So when we report GDP, 70% of that number is what you and I are spending. Of course, this is where corporations receive their revenue from. This is where they get their profits from. Then they go out and they buy more products and commodities, et cetera, to build more stuff to sell to you, whether it's a service or whether it's a actual physical product. This is what makes the economy work. So retail sales are extremely important. So it's not surprising that the economy is really built upon these April 15th tax day sales, because again, people get these checks back. They've been planning for months now. When I get this refund check, I always get a refund every year. Not me personally. Always wind up paying. I can't remember the last time I got a refund. But for a lot of people, it's like, oh yeah, every year I always get like $2,500 back. And this has been such a regular thing over the course of the last decade that they go, well, every year we get back, $1,500, $2,000. And so we'll go on a trip, or we'll buy that refrigerator, or we'll get that flat screen television, or we'll go get a new car. This is a big part of people's psyche about how they spend. And all of a sudden, because of this tax reform that was done in 2017, and remember, when we passed tax reform in December of 2017, it didn't take an effect until this year, because when we filed taxes in 2018, that was based upon the 2017 income tax law. So none of the tax reform that was passed in December of 2017 had even taken effect yet. This is the first filing season this year that the Tax Reform Act actually has had an impact on individuals. Now, it already had an impact on corporations last year, because they were dealing with lower tax rates in 2018. It boosted their bottom line profits. But this is the first filing season for individuals and small businesses that are dealing with the new tax law. All of a sudden, there's a lot of people looking around going, hey, wait a minute. I didn't get a tax refund, or I didn't get much of one back, or I actually wound up owing money. And this is because of the changes that were made. Now, remember, in a lot of the blue states, they've been subsidized for years. These states that have state income taxes, they've been getting subsidized for years by other states that don't have a state income tax, because those state income taxes were tax deductible. All of a sudden, this has been changed under the new tax law. So while a lot of states lost the income tax, the property tax deduction, for houses, and that was capped. That was the SALT tax. The state and local taxes was also revised that took away that subsidy, because they were getting a rebate back, which allowed them to live in these high tax states, and we weren't. So all of a sudden, the playing field's been leveled, and particularly states that are in the blue tax states, the blue states that have these state income taxes, all of a sudden are realizing, without that subsidy there, just how much they've got to pay in taxes. So this has caused a whole lot of problems. There's been a lot of pushback against the tax law because of that, particularly in states like New York and California. And there's even been discussions as of late about the reversal of that SALT tax deduction because of the pushback they've been getting from these high tax states. But again, they are just now feeling the impact of what their economic malfeasance, in many cases, has been doing to their state, right? So they've been paying in these state income taxes, going, yeah, it's great to live in California. And of course, they've got just record budget deficits, et cetera. But they were paying in the state income taxes, but getting to deduct that against their federal income tax. All of a sudden, they've got to pay both taxes, and now they're all upset. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my state's doing this to me. Well, it's been happening all along. It's just been that Texas and Florida and other states that don't have a state income tax has been picking up the slack for you. So again, now that we're back to a more level playing field, the problems with the existing tax code are becoming much more prevalent in society. So this is, and of course, recent polls have also shown that a lot of people are realizing that the tax law didn't really work in their favor. The tax law, when it was passed in 2017, greatly benefited corporations. We lowered the corporate income tax from 35% to 21%. Yeah, we tweaked around the edges a little bit for households, but not a lot. We kind of changed brackets, but didn't really do a big tax cut for individuals. So individuals really didn't see much of a benefit from the tax cut. The thought was, and this is always the thought about trickle-down economics, which never actually happens, is that we give the big tax break to corporations. They would then take all that excess money and then give it to workers by giving them lots of pay raises, and we would see, a stronger productivity growth. We'd see more capital expenditure investment. We'd see business investing into infrastructure and development and doing all this great stuff that was going to cause this massive boom in economic growth. And it was initially thought that was working because in 2018, we saw this big pickup in economic activity, but it wasn't the tax cut that was doing that. That was from the 3 major hurricanes and 2 major wildfires that we had in late 2017 that was feeding through as we were reconstructing from all that. So as soon as that reconstruction kind of faded, so did the economy. And what's coming to light now is that corporations didn't use the money for increasing wages and doing CapEx, et cetera. What they did do with the money was basically buy back shares. And our article this past weekend is the question that's becoming much more prevalent as of late, which is, should buybacks be illegal? Should stock buybacks by corporations be banned as they once were? Stock buybacks were banned for decades prior to Ronald Reagan coming into office. Under the Reagan administration, they reversed the issue to reverse the statute that then began to allow companies to buy back shares. There wasn't a big deal because very few companies bought back shares in the 80s and 90s because they were more in tune to issuing shares, stock splits, et cetera, as the demand was there for the markets as markets were becoming much more online facing and to individuals. But over the last decade, buybacks have become 80% of the entire market action. So in other words, the 80% of the price rise in the markets over the last decade has been from share buybacks alone. And the issue with share buybacks is, and the reason they were banned in the first place, is that it is a form of stock manipulation. So the rising question now is, should stock buybacks be banned again? Because it is an effective manipulation of stock prices. And particularly when 80% of the move in the market is driven by stock buybacks, you have to ask the question, just who is this benefiting? And of course, study after study has shown, and even SEC studies have shown, that the majority of individuals selling back their shares of stock are insiders to companies which are notified in advance of the stock buyback. So you've got to really question the feasibility of these buybacks and the impact on the overall markets. But again, when we come back to tax cuts and tax reforms and all part of this, the money never went to the workers and to capital investment. It went to corporate executives, insiders through share buybacks. And that's one of the rising angst of the markets as well as tax reform that's occurring now, and why you're seeing this show up in the polls. Quick break. We'll be back. Don't go away. You're listening to Lance Roberts Show right here on the Voice of Texas.
When you hear that music playing. Well, now you step inside, but you don't see too many faces.
Catch Lance Roberts' podcast later at lancerobertsshow.com.